recap. Of course, we'll cover some of the things we talked about in the last episode. And of course, we'll talk about the Masters of Wisdom and Maitreya and what they have to say, wise words and inspiration for these very challenging times.
And in a way, what we're trying to do is link up the presence of the masters in the world with the way that we're seeing humanity responding to sort of the mounting crises that face us all around. Very often people focus on how much worse everything is, or, you know, war, hunger, all of the crises that face us. And of course, we do need to focus on them, otherwise we can't solve them. But what we've been finding in just, you know, looking at different types of publications around the world, we're seeing that there's a huge flow of people coming together, working together to find solutions to these problems. And that this is something that's growing, and people are identifying different types of focus in this work. One of the catchphrases is solidarity, not charity. So rather than one group of people helping another group, it's people coming together to help themselves and each other. So that there's really a feeling of mutuality in this. And this is where we see humanity waking up. We see a question from Jacob saying, is humanity actually waking up? Well, our point of view is yes, humanity is waking up. And I agree. I think it's not always visible, but also you have to take into account perhaps that the mainstream media tend to focus on the most outrageous, the most attention-grabbing, calamitous, sort of awful things. And so in general, if you're looking at what we consider to be the news, it'll show you everything that's not working. Well, and I see Jacob has another question. Why don't we see directly for ourselves? What's wrong with us? Well, I would say you probably can see it, but I think it's a question of where you're focusing. I think that's really, at least that's been my experience, is that over time, I became more convinced that there was good news to be had, and looking for the good news is also, I think, part of the way of seeing it. What do you think, Tim?
Yeah, I mean, we're in a very challenging time for sure. All of these crises are global. I think more and more we're starting to recognize our interconnectedness. As you're saying here, solidarity. We're starting to really connect with each other because we're all facing the same sort of problems, variations of them, and we're starting to face those problems. And I think that's where the hope is, that we're starting to face them, to be aware of them, and to talk about them and begin to take action. And so that's definitely part of it. But it's also a unique time because we have the opportunity to build new things and new structures, and that takes time. We're in a transitional time. In transition, it's not perfect, but it's something that has to be done. And so we start to see, and we look for, as Sabina said, we look for these movements, these gathering of people. The voice of the people is clamoring and getting louder and louder. In the climate crisis, we see large movements of people. In Black Lives Matter movement, recently with Palestine, I don't think we've ever seen that much public support across the globe for that situation until now. So we're starting to see more and more people connecting, sort of organizing together from all different backgrounds across the globe. And I think that's a very hopeful thing.
Well, and one of the things that is definitely part of this is the type of technology that's available to us now. And that makes it possible for people to connect with each other across great distances and to communicate lots of ideas, lots of detail with each other instantaneously. And I think this makes a very big difference because within hours, people can come together in large groups and put into motion projects. I was just reading about people making masks and all the different ways in which people are doing this. And for example, face shields. There was a project I think in the San Francisco, in the Bay Area, where design students and teachers came together and put out the call to anyone who had a 3D printer or other types of technology to start working using plans that they provided, making face shields. And within, I think, 24 hours on one particular day, you know, they received a shipment of the material, the plastic needed to make these things. And within one day, they had produced tens of thousands, I mean, a huge number of these things, simply because there was a decentralized way of working and sharing information. So it's a real, it's a kind of a new time in this sense. And the Maitreya and the masters are inspiring us, and these energies that are streaming into the planet and are enlivening us and activating us, if you like to put it like that. I think that's a big part of it. And that's what we do on this show, is we talk about how the presence of Maitreya and the masters is really underpinning what we're seeing out in the world.
Yeah. Well, we could talk a bit more about that. We might as well fill in some background for you. It's a key time. And a lot of what we'll talk about stem from the Ageless Wisdom teachings, which are, it's an esoteric teaching philosophy that has been around for thousands and thousands of years, of course, has inspired the major religions. Many groups throughout history have been aware of and inspired by the Ageless Wisdom teachings. And now, of course, these teachings are available to anyone who would like to put them to use, largely because of the efforts of some of the individuals you see here on the screen, and many others as well. But they've written many books. You can find them in a good bookstore. Helena Blavatsky, Alice Bailey, Helena Roerich, and most recently Benjamin Creme. And we'll talk a bit more about Benjamin Creme as well. He is sort of the most recent writer of the Ageless Wisdom teachings. They were all great students of the Ageless Wisdom teachings. And you'll find that much of what he's written is very pertinent to this time and very helpful. So he was a painter, a great painter. He volunteered, toured around the world for over 40 years talking about Maitreya and the Masters of Wisdom, the Ageless Wisdom teachings. Wrote 17 books, I believe, which are available. You can always take a look for them. They're great books. And talked a lot about this time, about the change of ages, which we'll talk about as well. And he was in contact with the Master of Wisdom, a telepathic communication. So a little bit different than channeling. It's actually quite a bit different than channeling. It's a direct contact that took many years to establish. So the information that comes forward is very accurate. The Master of Wisdom can see through Benjamin Creme's eyes and look out, and fused in such a way that the Master's thoughts can be put forward. Benjamin Creme can hear them clearly, and in the reverse as well. The Master can hear Benjamin Creme's thoughts or questions that would come through Benjamin Creme as well.
And basically what we talk about when we talk about Maitreya and the Masters of Wisdom, the majority of our information comes from Benjamin Creme's books, as well to some degree also to the books from the other teachers that we just showed you, but mostly through the books of Benjamin Creme. And what we like to do when we start talking about the Masters of Wisdom and Maitreya is to focus on the change of age that we're going through right now, the change from the Piscean age to the Aquarian age, and how this is impacting us. It's not just something that you talk about in terms of, you know, people talk about the new age thinking, new age this, new age that. And what we like to point out is that all of these changes that we're seeing are caused by energies that are streaming into our world, which are different from what we were mostly experiencing previously in the age of Pisces. Of course, it's a blend. One age doesn't suddenly stop, like turning off a switch, and the other ones start by turning on a switch, but rather the energies of the previous age are slowly diminishing in volume simply because there's no increase there. It's just dying away, and the new energies are increasing. And so we've now passed the point where there are more energies of Aquarius entering our world than the energies of Pisces. And so these energies of Aquarius, they stimulate our feeling of being connected with each other and the feeling of being in a group, of wanting to work together, reaching out to each other. And we're all in the process of discovering how much we can do when we connect with each other. That's a huge keynote right now, I think, that we're seeing everywhere. And perhaps the pandemic made it more obvious because it inflicted a type of isolation that then made us need and become aware of our need to reach out. And so that's what we're seeing. And I think that's a large part of what we're going to talk about today.
Yeah. And of course, yeah, as Sabina said, the energies are changing. We're in this transitional time. And so this is where you have the contrast of structures that were built in the age of Pisces, political, economic, social structures, and then the opportunity to build new structures under the energies of Aquarius. And so you find this clash, and you have those that are trying to kind of preserve those old ways that are not really working for anybody, not working for 99% of the people. And then you have the push and the impetus, the voice of the people under Aquarian energy, which is more about group and unity and diversity and cooperation as opposed to competition. So these are some of the contrasting energies brought forward from these different ages. And we're experiencing a little bit of both. And as Sabina said, more of the Aquarian now than Piscean. So day by day, more of that Aquarian energy is building. Ideals being manifested on the physical plane is one. So instead of them being a pie in the sky ideal as high as it can be, the Aquarian energy will help it manifest. So we're wanting to make things like human dignity, human rights. We want to manifest that and experience it on the physical plane, and synthesize that.
You remember when there were some teenage activists who came to prominence after a school shooting, and one of them said, and it was quoted a lot, that your thoughts and prayers can't protect us from bullets. And
we want action, right?
that's right. We need to change laws. We need to get to the nuts and bolts of this. Now, that's not to say that thoughts and prayers aren't potent and effective in their own way, but you also need action on the ground, on the physical plane, because we're living here on the physical plane. That's where our lives are rooted, and physical bullets will hurt and harm your physical body. So that to me represented a real kind of straightforward declaration of the fact that more is needed. It's not enough to just have a nice thought about something, but you have to take action.
Right. You want to think it and plan it, but bring it into action and take action and be aware of everybody else's needs and what's missing and how do we tackle facing these crises. And I mean, these global crises, and they work out largely in the political and economic field. So we need to, that's not separate. We need to work it out in those areas, as Sabina was saying, and as that student said, changing laws, taking those actions.
So the Masters of Wisdom, they have many different roles. One of them is that they are the custodians of the plan of evolution. And what that refers to is the fact that there actually is a plan for us, for the Earth, not in the sense of a top-down, 5-year plan, but more at the level of a blueprint or a sense of direction, a guide in terms of each of us evolving and growing lifetime after lifetime, but all of life evolving and growing, because according to the Ageless Wisdom teachings, all life is conscious. So consciousness is everywhere. And the Earth itself is a conscious being. The physical Earth is the body of manifestation of that great being. Just as I have a physical body that you can see, Tim has a physical body, but the being that we are, each of us, according to this teaching, is a divine being who incarnates lifetime after lifetime. And there's a constant process of evolution that our consciousness is growing and evolving all the time through these successive incarnations. And so there's an overall plan, and the masters are people like ourselves who have gotten to a point in their evolution where they can now help us, and that's what they do. And that's a major role for them, is to help the rest of us. The big news that we like to talk about on this show is that these Masters of Wisdom, although they've always been working from behind the scenes to help humanity and the rest of life, they are now returning to work openly with us and to live on the physical plane with us. This for the first time in 98,000 years. That's a very long time, and it's a very big moment. It means that we're ready to work with them, and that probably also that we really need their guidance. Now, they say that they're not going to do the work for us. They can't do that. That would be infringing our free will, but they're here to guide us and to inspire us. And they are confident that we are going to make the right choices in terms of continuing to live here rather than blowing ourselves up and all life with us.
So it's a very exciting time. We're ready for a closer relationship with the Masters of Wisdom, and they're fully aware of the change of ages and all these crises we're facing of the human experience. And so there'll be great wisdom and inspiration from them to help us face these challenges. As Sabina said, we have to do the work. We made the mess. With the Masters of Wisdom is Maitreya, the world teacher, who is sort of the head of the Masters of Wisdom, the most evolved. The Masters of Wisdom would call him a master. And as Sabina said, everything is evolving. So the Masters continue to evolve. Maitreya continues to evolve. The whole cosmos continues to evolve. Maitreya is the head of the spiritual kingdom, though, for the planet. He embodies the position of the Christ, which is kind of the head office or president, if you will, and embodies love for the planet. So he is love for the planet, continuous, unconditional love. We're not talking about a romantic love. We're talking an unconditional love that fuses and nurtures and helps us to evolve. And he is on the physical plane as well. In fact, right now, he is in the physical plane, ready to help us face these challenges, along with many of the Masters of Wisdom.
One of the things that we like to point out when we talk about Maitreya being the head of the spiritual kingdom is that this is not the way that we think of a head or a boss in our structures and organizations, though it is true, generally speaking, that someone who has a position of greater authority also has more responsibility. But when we talk about Maitreya, really the emphasis is on the responsibility part. And so he's the head in the sense that he has more consciousness, so he's more responsible. And it's basically similar to a family where the parent has more knowledge and therefore more responsibility than the child. And so the love is for the one who has less awareness or less ability to look out for them and help them, guard them and guide them. And so in that sense, that's our relationship to the Masters of Wisdom and Maitreya with them. We are like the younger brothers and sisters, if you will.
Maybe the old wise brother or sister, an elder, right? And also the Maitreya is here for everyone, regardless of religion. He's the awaited one in every religion, but also here for everyone. And has the set of priorities, as we were talking about, sufficient and correct food and water. I mean, all of the priorities that Maitreya have are the starving millions, those who are suffering. His heart is with them, and that's the priorities he would like us to take action on. Adequate housing and shelter, education, healthcare, restoration of the planet, the environment is huge. Removing fear and guilt, endow all with sanctity and self-worth, restoring our human dignity, recognizing who we really are as divine beings in incarnation. So these are some of Maitreya's main priorities.
And I think it's easy, if you look at these priorities, you might be thinking, well, that really is pie in the sky. I don't think that's ever going to happen. That's not possible. It's too good to be true. And we contend that, in fact, it is happening. And one way that we like to point it out is the UN Declaration on the Rights of Human Rights, is that these, in Article 25, you see a list of what everyone has a right to. That's basically the same list as Maitreya's priorities. Now, I'm not saying that because this declaration exists, it means we've solved the problem. No, but I think this was the first time that there was a coming together on a global level, internationally, to assert that, yes, these are human rights. And just the concept of a human right, that you have that right simply because you exist. You don't have to do anything to earn it. And it's not only conferred on a certain small group. This is a human right. It's for every single human being on the planet. So I think what we're going to talk about today is to say, yes, these maybe pie in the sky ideals, are actually being made real by people everywhere. Normal people like you and I are bringing about solutions to solve our problems and to create this world in which everyone will have enough to eat, housing, healthcare, education, etc.
No one is too small to take action at this time. The energies are incredible. We can build a new civilization. These are some of the crises that we started talking about and the responses, right? Last episode: environmental, humanitarian, economic, political, health, spiritual. I guess we'll review quickly a few of the ones we talked about last time.
Started with a few responses to environmental crises, and very briefly we talked about rainwater harvesting in Tucson, Arizona, which is in the desert. It only receives 12 inches on average of rainfall every year, and yet they have a successful rainwater harvesting program there. It was started by one person, but the community got on board, and it's really working for them. In Paris, there is geothermal heat being used, piped underground, to provide heating. And these are just a couple of things. There are many, many projects that if you're interested and you want to look them up online, they're out there.
And we thought we'd put a quote in here from Greta Thunberg, since we're talking about environmental crises. Feels like we have passed some kind of social tipping point where people are starting to realize that we cannot keep looking away from these things. And that's another sign of awakening. Not ignoring the problems, awareness is raised, and we're starting to face the problems so we can learn and grow and save the planet. We cannot keep sweeping these things under the carpet, these injustices. People are starting to find their voice, to understand that they can actually have an impact. And that's true, I think, more so than ever. We can see, like Sabine was saying, with internet and this interconnection, you start to see all sorts of people taking action and facing these problems in really interesting, creative, genuine ways, and realizing the power of their voice.
And we have this quote from Maitreya. Maitreya gave out messages through Benjamin Creme, 140 of them. And in these messages, he talks a lot about our ability to act and to bring about change and create what we envision. And he talks about this: a new voice being heard among the nations, the voice of truth, which contains the hope, the promise of the new time. And if someone of his stature says this, I believe it must be true. And I see it when I look around me. I see this new voice, the voice of truth, which contains hope. It's absolutely out there, and we hear it all the time.
Yeah, we really recognize a truthful voice, and the truth is coming out, if you will. All the underlying things are coming forward for awareness as well. We talked about humanitarian crises responses, wonderful food bank initiative in the US where they deliver food with dignity. And very quick, you can order online. Nobody has to know that you're short on funds and you can't afford food. It's delivered to your door, just like any other sort of online delivery. If the order isn't right, they'll actually send another order with a gift card and an apology. We talked about initiative in Chicago, replacing guns with jobs, sort of job placement, training, getting people off the streets instead of resorting to violence, giving them other options. Some great movements to face crises. World hunger.
And yeah, this is something I was curious, how much would it cost to end world hunger? What do people think? What are the experts saying? When I started typing in how much would it cost to, the first suggestion that came up was end world hunger. So I was curious whether that was Google just giving me what it thought I would be interested in, or whether it's really based on the number of people who are asking that question. And so I asked people I know, family, friends, to put in the same question: just how much would it cost? And we found that across the board, that was the first suggestion that everybody was getting. So it's just one way to say, look, people are thinking about this. People's awareness is focusing on the problems. So really, to make you I think it makes me aware that I'm living in a sea of consciousness of other people's minds working, thinking about what is needed, what can we do, how are we going to do this? And then we also looked at global military expenditure. How has it been changing over time? And we saw that it's been dropping consistently. I mean, there are a few ups and downs along the way, but really starting in 1960, the first time it was measured, it's been going down over time. That's another indication that priorities are changing. And then we have this little weaponry versus livingry. This word livingry was invented by Buckminster Fuller, the architect, to contrast with weaponry, a word which we know well. And right now, we have really quite an astounding difference in how much money we spend on each of these. And we just put the numbers up to show that, well, no wonder things look the way they do in the news. Look at how much we spend on killing each other, and look how much it would cost, according to the experts, if we were to provide enough for everybody. The food is out there. We have it. That's not really the issue.
We have a quote from Maitreya here: "The problems of mankind are real but solvable. The solution lies within your grasp. Take your brother's need as the measure for your action and solve the problems of the world. There is no other course." And even that chart is real but solvable. I mean, what we're spending, what we choose to spend money on. Do we choose on living or weaponry? Solvable.
Yeah. And so another project that we saw when we looked at the economic crises, we saw that there was a project in New Zealand where they were, instead of throwing out fish heads, they discovered that fish heads are considered a chiefly food, that is food fit for the chiefs in Maori society. And so a project was started by people to keep the fish heads and distribute them. And so they've lifted, countless families out of hunger with this project. And that's just one small project.
We talked about universal basic income as well, which is not necessarily a new concept. Thomas More proposed it in 1516, but it's definitely become prominent discussion these days, especially with automation and, of course, with the pandemic and tackling how we make a living. And so there have been many pilot programs that have been trialed all over the world. Seems like a very good option.
And the main criticism that's been made when people talk about the idea of a universal income is that, oh, if you give people money, then they just will lose all initiative and they won't look for work and they won't make any effort. But so people went ahead to study this and see, is that true? And in fact, it's the opposite. When you give people money, that makes it possible for them to then look for jobs in a more effective way. And what they found was that when people receive a little bit of help in terms of income on a regular basis, something they know they can count on, in fact, their ability to find a job goes up, not down.
And we could get into the political crises. We may have started talking about it last time, about the Mayor's Roundtable.
Yeah, I think we did, because basically we wanted to look at different levels of governance, because in the news we usually see headlines relating to heads of state and maybe at the level of provinces or territories, or in the United States, the states. But we were interested in the municipal level because a lot takes place on the ground locally in the community where you live. A lot of the changes that you will experience firsthand are brought about by your own municipal government. And so we found some interesting projects that are being done by mayors, reaching out to work with other mayors to share ideas. And so we've just put two of them up here on the screen. A roundtable in 2018. Mayors from 4 different cities sharing ideas. And then another one, more recent, Mayors Dialogue on Growth and Solidarity. And this is across Europe and Africa, started by 2 mayors, one in Senegal, one in Italy, from Milan, who knew each other and began a conversation. And that led to this project. And it's quite interesting because they're really able to create change that's very powerful for their local communities. They're pooling resources and collaborating in key sectors, green economies, housing, etc. Lots of different things.
It's a great example of true local representation and trickling up to the larger instead of trickle down.
Right. And this is something that we found just when we were looking up different cohorts, the generations. We talk about the boomers, the zoomers, Generation X, Generation Y. And so we found this information from the Pew Research Center, how many people in each cohort think that the government should do more to solve problems. And over time, you can see there's a steady increase. And I think that ties in with what we see around us in the world of people demanding change and people saying it's incumbent on our governing bodies to bring about these changes, to put public money to work in these ways.
I had a quote here from Erica Chenoweth about nonviolent action. 3.5% of the population actively participating in protests will lead to political change. Success appears inevitable. So it's very encouraging. A very small amount of population is required to create real change. And it's been proven, I think, in the same article that nonviolent demonstration is the quickest, least costly, and safest way to struggle. And not by melting the heart of the opponent, but by restricting their options. And it is also a fundamental human right. So nonviolent demonstrations have empowered labor movements, closed and canceled dozens of nuclear plants, raised awareness about systemic racism. I mean, the list goes on. So it's a very effective way of using your voice, this voice of truth, creating change in the world. And so we are seeing more and more of that and its effectiveness.
And then we have a quote from Benjamin Krem's master from one of the articles that he gave out through Benjamin Krem called A World in Change. When men understand the necessity of change, then will they gladly accept that which frightens them today. Understanding and courage go hand in hand. And I think we're seeing that really, that people are sort of girding their loins. They feel capable of standing up to large corporations. They find the ways to do this. We saw recently some interesting victories against big oil on the part of people working together, using the law, using all kinds of strategies in which to take action and be effective, even at the level of a David and Goliath kind of scenario.
People seem to be less tolerant of injustice, less complacent, wanting to encouraged to use their voice and seeing the effectiveness of it.
And John, our chat show host, just put in a little quote from Alice Walker: "Activism is the rent I pay for living on the planet." I like that.
That's a great quote. So, okay, so now we're caught up to health crises. I think we can carry on. So some of the interesting responses to various health crises, some good stories. So on a large level, the smallpox eradication, that's a huge success in 1980 because it was worldwide, right?
That's right. And it's considered by many people to be the biggest achievement so far in international public health, though maybe the coronavirus response is going to be up there as well. We're amazed at the speed with which vaccines have been found, but we're still working on distribution. It's still lopsided, and we're seeing the same kinds of injustices that we know of in generally every area also extend to the coronavirus vaccine distribution problem. So those in well-off countries have access, and those in poorer countries right now do not, largely do not. So, well, we're working on it, right? It's a work in progress.
Work in progress, yeah. And I like the small house elder care facility. That was facilities. That was a great response to caring for elders and their health in the later years, and mental health as well. That was a project. There are about 300 homes now called the Greenhouse Project, founded by Dr. Bill Thomas, who's a geriatrician. He wanted to humanize that sterile environment of nursing homes that are currently in use. The long corridors, all the doors are the same. You know, if you have a bit of dementia, you're not going to know where your room is, kind of that sterile environment. So this was a counter to that by creating these homes that are really like homes. They have a large table in the center that seat 12 people. So it'd be maximum 12 people in this home, nothing more than that, so that you don't get sort of lost as a number. They're private rooms, of course, with everything you need around this area. Easy access to outside, you know, gardens, time outside. There's nursing staff, of course, to care, but there's artwork, a piano, there's every amenity you would need, but with a home family environment.
And
So it's a great project.
well, and what's interesting is that during the pandemic, these small house facilities had a much lower rate of infection. They were like about 32 people per 1,000, whereas in the regular nursing homes, it was, I think, 100 something.
146 per 1,000. Yeah.
Really,
So 3, 4, 4 or 5 times more cases in these other environments. So great for the pandemic and great for mental health and comfort.
and it's really seeing people as individuals. This ties in with Maitreya and the Masters of Wisdom, who see each of us as a divine being. And so treating elderly people, just as we should treat everybody, as an individual, a human being with dignity, personality, rather than a number or just a cog in a big machine. And I think that's one of the things that when you look around, what you see is there's a growing recognition by people everywhere that each of us matters. Everyone is important. There is no one who can be denied that recognition or that respect. And so that's what we see, whether it's Black Lives Matter or Me Too, we're seeing this recognition. Yeah.
Of everyone's right to dignity. Yeah, absolutely. And we can do it. Less tolerant of forces of greed and competition that sacrifice human dignity for profit. Here's a quote here: "The peoples of the world are only beginning to realize that they have a voice and therefore power, and must be encouraged to demonstrate unceasingly until the governments of the world respond. It is part of Maitreya's work to stimulate and educate the people to demand their rights." We all have a right. We have a right to demand. And the crises we're facing, well, we'll get into it, spiritual crises. When we're talking about spirituality, I mean, that is every aspect of life. It doesn't belong just to religion. Politics is spiritual. Economics can be spiritual. Health, all of these crises we're talking about, all of these areas of life we can consider to be spiritual. So underlying it, humanity is in a spiritual crisis. We've forgotten who we are. We're starting to remember now. The response is, as Sabina said, recognizing rights, dignities, that everyone matters, that we are divine in essence. So the spiritual crises is sort of worldwide, and that's what we are now responding to. And it will work out through all these different systems, especially economic and political. These are areas that could undergo massive transformation to bring that forward.
And I think another part of this is that the previous status quo in a way was that each of us felt that we were a passive, either victim or simply spectator to the actions of those in power, the powers that be. And we simply had to put up with whatever they decided. And even though nominally we thought, oh, well, I live in a democracy, I vote every 4 years, but in between those moments of voting, it felt as though others were in charge and we were just waiting around and seeing what they would do. There's an interesting idea that history is actually created, or change is created from the ground up, not from the top down. A historian named Howard Zinn has written about this, and many others as well. He kind of spearheaded it, I think. But what we're seeing now is that people individual regular people are recognizing this fact and taking it on themselves to be those agents of change. So people are not waiting until some authority acts. People are saying, I have the power, I can act, and I will, and I'm going to, and I'm doing it now.
Very important point. We have an example here of these teenage boys as a response, talking about in their environment, taking action. There was a fire here in St. Albert at a seniors care center, and these were teenage boys, 3 boys who were heading to a basketball game. They were across the street and they saw smoke from this building, and they decided, they made that choice right away. Well, what can we do? We can help in some way. So they drove over right away, and one of the boys just sort of jumped out of the car as it was still rolling to run in, and the other 2 parked the car. All 3 went in, got quick instructions to help to move all of the residents outside. And so they went right up to the top floor and began knocking on doors. They had their masks on and everything, knocking on doors, raising awareness that there's a fire in the building, and helping the seniors get to safety. One of the boys had to carry a lady down the stairs because she was unable to use the stairs. But all of the residents were evacuated with the help of these 3 boys, and of course, eventually the fire department as well when they got on site. So a great story of them taking action in the moment, recognizing the need and addressing it.
And Maitreya has said, in fact, that all are needed, everyone. No one is too young or too small to take part in this great plan for the rescue and the rehabilitation of our world. And so here we see that in action. These young boys stepped up and took on this role of just doing what was needed right then and there, responding at that moment. The other thing that we realized is a huge kind of response to spiritual crisis are the Truth and Reconciliation Commissions that have been put into action in South Africa, Rwanda, and Canada more recently. And I just wanted to talk briefly about the difference between restorative justice and traditional methods of justice, which often focus on retribution, or the idea of not really revenge, but retribution is similar in the idea of, well, you did something bad, so now something bad has to be done to you. I mean, that's what punishment is, you know, crime and punishment, incarceration. But in restorative justice, this is a peaceful approach to harm, and it's based on problem solving. And the idea here is that rather than it being people who are considered experts, like professionals in the law or the state, restorative resolutions engage those who are harmed. Now I'm reading from Wikipedia, wrongdoers and their affected communities in search of solutions that promote repair, reconciliation, and the rebuilding of relationships. So it's about building partnerships and establishing or reestablishing mutual responsibility for constructive responses to wrongdoing. So it's creating something, building something. It's a very different approach, and it results in really different outcomes.
It brings raising awareness in and facing the problem, understanding and moving forward and building something, not to repeat the past.
That's right. And there's, again, this respect, respecting the needs of the victim, but also the needs of the wrongdoer and the community itself through processes that preserve the safety and dignity of everybody. So it's really inclusive, and it's not binary, you know, the sort of right, wrong, crime and punishment idea that in traditional systems are applied. And so there was first the first time we saw a Truth and Reconciliation Commission was in South Africa. That was initiated in 1996 as a response to apartheid, and as apartheid was being dismantled, this was a response to that. And later in Rwanda, as a response to the genocide there, that was initiated in 1999, but it was made permanent in 2002. So it's an ongoing process. It's not like, oh, we did it, it's over. This is an ongoing process. And that makes sense because everyone has to continue to live in their communities. So life keeps going on. So this also needs to continue. And then more recently in Canada, there was a Truth and Reconciliation Commission initiated in 2008, and they spent 7 years gathering information, talking to people across the country, and came out with a report in 2015. But clearly, again, it's an ongoing process. It's not over. And most recently, Tim, I think you're going to talk about the discovery in British Columbia, right? Kamloops?
In Kamloops, a discovery of a mass grave of Indigenous children that had been in the residential school system, and horrific finding. So it opens this up again, and of course, a demand for reconciliation, a demand to identify all of the bodies, return them to the families, to hear the stories, and to recognize again this cultural genocide. And the original commission had 94 calls to action. There'll be many more calls to action based on this, and also the demand to use radar to find more of these graves and get the full truth out. And there have been demonstrations around, of course, for this, and also to look at our historical monuments. Ryerson University has Ryerson as a statue named after the individual that put together the residential school system, one of them anyways. So demands to maybe change that, to take down the statue, to rename the university, to rename some of these public areas. And also we still have to look at how we are treating each other, how we are treating the Indigenous communities, how there's still not clean water in some of these areas. There's still boil water mandates. So again, it's ongoing, as Sabina said. So some horrific findings, and most recently here. So again, more calls to action on that front.
And we're seeing this response on the part of the public, that people are paying attention, they're interested, they're concerned, they're acting. And we see that all as part of the influence of these new energies of the age of Aquarius, the presence of the masters and Maitreya. It's really heightening our ability to act and our readiness to act. It's vivifying us. And we have another quote from Benjamin Creme. A properly galvanized, educated world public opinion is a force against which no nation on earth can stand. And so in the response on the part of the public to all of these crises, that's what we're seeing, is people have the ability to respond, they have information, they're galvanized, and they're taking action. And so we're very convinced that this is all part of this new time, and that we're heading in a good direction.
And again, all are needed, everyone. No one is too small or young to take part in this great plan for the rescue and the rehabilitation of our world. So there's the key: rescue and rehabilitation. And Margaret Mead: never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has. And I guess we could add that the group is getting bigger.
Well, yeah, the group is expanding to become humanity, the whole group, all of us. And we have a cover from The Guardian Weekly about people power. They dubbed that decade from 2010 to 2020 the decade of protest, because the number of people protesting around the world just grew and grew and grew. It used to be something sporadic and unusual, and now it's become almost commonplace. And Maitreya has said, the will and voice of the people will become the guiding light of all countries and nations. And that's what we're seeing. It's the people themselves speaking out who are shaping public discourse. They're guiding policy. And we're seeing presidents and leaders responding to what the people are demanding. And that's what's really producing change.
Another quote here from Benjamin Creme's master: almost without exception, the nations of the world are caught up in a new experience, the emergence of the articulate masses.
And we're just going to basically wrap up here by talking a little bit more about Maitreya and the Masters of Wisdom, what they say about what's happening right now and what they see is coming. The fact that sharing and justice, brotherhood and freedom, these are things we've been aspiring to for a long time. They're not new ideas. But what Maitreya is saying is that now we're going to anchor them in the world. And I think that's what we're trying to say. And what we've been talking about today is we're seeing evidence of this all around us.
Of the anchoring, yeah. And that Aquarian energy, manifesting it in the physical plane. Gradually, the good is gaining the upper hand in this age-old struggle for the minds and hearts of men. Everywhere there are signs that a new spirit is awakening in man, a new sense of responsibility and a renewed reverence for life in all its forms.
And the idea that there's a plan, an overall vision for how the evolution of life on Earth will unfold. What I find really interesting is that one of the masters, Joel Kuhl, who gave information out through Alice Bailey, said, only through humanity itself can the divine plan work out. So we are really the crossroads in the middle between the level of those who are perfected, the masters, and physical plane life, because we have that divine spirit in us. All life does, but we have consciousness. We have a consciousness that allows us to be aware of ourselves. And so this is a really important point. He also said, hope lies in the fact that goodwill is far more widespread throughout the world than is recognized. And I think that's what we're trying to say. More and more people are recognizing it now. The spirit of goodwill is present in millions of people, and it evokes a sense of responsibility. And that's what we're seeing. We're seeing people act on that sense of responsibility. So, yeah.
And we said earlier, Maitreya is here for everyone. He's a teacher in the broadest sense, but he's also the awaited one in all the religions. And we wanted to talk about the key, since we're talking about the voice of the people and the power of the voice. It's something that we can demand and would solve a lot of problems, is sharing the world's resources. And that is the key, according to Maitreya, into solving many of these problems. So sharing in a global process, sharing all the extras that each nation would have in their inventory of resources with the rest of the world. So it would be something that would involve an inventory of what every nation has to offer in excess of what its needs are, that can be redistributed to other nations that do need those resources, and vice versa, until there's a much more equitable sharing and just sharing of resources.
And of course, what that demands is a reorientation of our political and economic systems, specifically our economic systems, so that the idea of profit becomes relegated to really a kind of a dustbin, because what you need is sufficiency. You don't need more than that. And there is enough for everyone to have enough. And once you realize that your happiness is actually not commensurate with your wealth, that is, beyond a certain point, more wealth doesn't make you happier. People have done studies on happiness in different societies, and they found where the difference between the richest and the poorest is smallest, there is the highest level of happiness among the entire population, also those who are wealthy. So it's more and more being recognized that this model we were using right now, this capitalism out of control, is not actually providing us with the happiness we're seeking. And so, as Maitreya and the masters say, sharing is the way forward.
Sounds like a more balanced approach, more sufficiency than abundance, finding that sort of balance point of getting the needs met and enough leisure time in life, and equitable distribution of resources so that everyone has that opportunity and that balance.
And I like the fact that he links that with peace, because we see a lot of signs now in marches where people say no justice, no peace. And I think that's absolutely true. Well, how are you going to get that justice? Through sharing. So that there's a direct line: sharing, justice, peace.
Peace. So if you'd like to learn more, there's lots of other information. on Maitreya and the Masters of Wisdom and changes in the world. You can always visit the website, www.share-international.org. There's a Share International YouTube channel you can check out. Lots of great videos and lectures there. And also there's some free downloads and some books that available on share-ecart.com if you'd like to check that out. Also, there's a Share International magazine. It has no advertising. It's translated into many different languages. You can always subscribe to it if you'd like at share-ecart.com. Great articles about new movements in humanity, new innovation. There's always a message from the Master of Wisdom. Great teachings in there. It's a fabulous magazine if you're interested.
And there are books free to download if you're interested. You can read more about all of this without spending a penny. Just download them on your device and read away. And we're going to follow up now doing transmission meditation. So one of the books you can download for free is Transmission, a Meditation for the New Age, which describes how to do it. We'll do that as well now. It's very simple. But in addition, there are lots and lots of questions and answers about the meditation. It's a fascinating read. So you don't have to spend money to get more information here.
So now we'll switch to transmission meditation. We'll just give you a little description of what it is. And we hope you can join us for just to do the meditation with us. It's a great way to help the world. Basically, the helping the world aspect is that there are all these energies we're talking about, the Aquarian energies that are flooding the planet, solar energies, cosmic energies, but they're very potent, and a lot of them just bounce off our shoulders. Like we can't absorb them because they're so potent. Transmission meditation is an opportunity to step those energies down to make them available to everybody. So it's a way to help the world. So just like a transformer would step down strong electrical current to the point of an outlet that you can plug a plug into and make it usable, the same process happens with transmission meditation. So the Masters of Wisdom guide these energies. They direct them through our energy body, our chakra system. And so it's a safe meditation. There's no risk. They know all the energies and the amounts and potencies. They're master scientists, so there's no risk there. It's very safe. They know how much to direct and what combination of energies to direct. We don't have to send them anywhere. We don't have to say, oh, I want to send these to, this area of the world or that area of the world. The masters do that for us. All we have to do is keep our attention here between the eyebrows, at the ajna center it's called, and let the energies flow. If our energy drops, like if our attention drops down here, then you think the word om silently in your mind, and your attention will gradually come back up here. So the idea is to keep your attention up here as much as you can so that the energies can flow.
And you don't need to believe in the energies, in the masters, in Maitreya. You don't need to believe in anything in order to do this meditation. Just try it out, do it, and it works. Now, some people say, oh, but I can't feel anything. Is it really working? What we understand from the Ageless Wisdom teachings is that people have different degrees of sensitivity and also different types of physical bodies. So not everyone will feel the same things. Some people don't feel anything, other people do. That's not an indicator of whether it's working. However, Benjamin Creme has said that transmission meditation is much more powerful in terms of its effect on your own personal evolution than any other meditation right now. If you're doing transmission regularly, you will experience a heightened kind of growth. You'll be aware of that as a result of doing it. Now, it's a meditation that can only be done in groups of 3 or more. It's based on the science of triangles. So you must be working with others in order to do it. It's a meditation for the Aquarian age, which makes sense since it's a group meditation. And right now, during the pandemic, since people can't meet together as they used to do, there are groups meeting using technology, for example, Zoom. And in the chat there, you'll see links for how you can connect with groups who are meditating regularly every week and join them if you're interested, because you can meditate in this connection and it works.
It's a great way to help the world. It's we always start a transmission meditation with the great invocation, and it's an invocation that is intended to get the attention of the master of wisdom to say, yes, we're ready to meditate. So every transmission meditation starts with the great invocation, and then we start the meditation.
So how it works is all of us say the great invocation out loud. Since we're right now on a Zoom program, what we'll do is, for example, the person who's one of us will say it out loud, and the other person will mute themselves and say it out loud, so that, and all of you are muted, of course, so you'll say it out loud as well, wherever you are. So we'll all say it together in unison, and then each person focusing on their ajna center, the meditation will begin. We will sit and meditate for half an hour, and you're very welcome to continue beyond that or to leave at any point. And we hope you really like it.
Yeah. And so again, spine straight, sit comfortably, attention here, the ajna center. Think the word Om if your attention drops. And I'll set the half hour. Okay.
All right. Are you going to say the great invocation?
Sure. Sounds great. From the point of light within the mind of God, let light stream forth into the minds of men. Let light descend on earth. From the point of love within the heart of God, let love stream forth into the hearts of men. May Christ return to earth. From the center where the will of God is known, let purpose guide the little wills of men, the purpose which the masters know and serve. From the center, which we call the race of men, let the plan of love and light work out, and may it seal the door where evil dwells. Let light and love and power restore the plan on earth. And that was transmission meditation. Hope you enjoyed it.
And thank you for contributing and helping out. We'll be back next week with Yvonne Lewis and the rising voice of the people to talk more about the changes that we're seeing around us and how they reflect the presence of Maitreya and the Masters of Wisdom.
Sounds exciting. Thanks everyone for joining us. Hope you enjoy the rest of the day.